From some wild abuses of the rules to keeping the game clean in more ways than one, these are the NBA players that changed the rules forever. The NBA has been around for a long time, and the rules, for the most part, have been pretty consistent. Put the ball in the hoop, bounce the ball while you're moving with it, etc. But like in any game with rules, there will always be players who find a way to exploit a loophole. And because these little rule benders manage to ruin the spirit of the basketball, or are obviously not how the game is meant to be played, it doesn't really take very long for the rules to change. So in today's video, we will be going over the players that forced the NBA to change its rules. First up, we have the Harden rule, named for James Harden, who currently plays for the Philly 76ers. So basketball is a non-contact sport, right? Everyone knows that you're not supposed to touch the guy who has the ball. Well, since the dawn of the game, players have often tried to draw fouls while they were in possession of the ball. But James Harden took things to the next level. See, Harden is known for his crafty offensive moves, particularly his ability to draw fouls on his jump shots. Harden spent so much time at the free throw line that the NBA implemented the Harden rule in 2017. The rule aimed to limit the advantages that offensive players received when they initiated non-basketball moves to draw fouls. Prior to the rule change, Harden had mastered the art of initiating contact with defenders by leaning into them or swinging his arms upward during shooting motions. This often resulted in defensive fouls being called, granting him easy scoring opportunities at the free throw line. The new rule meant that referees had to be more discerning and not reward offensive players who blatantly exploit the rules to draw fouls. Check it out in this footage here. Harden intentionally tangles up Josh Hart's arm in order to draw the foul and get himself to the free throw line. The Harden rule aimed to strike a balance between allowing offensive players to create space and defenders to contest shots without being penalized unfairly. This adjustment highlighted the NBA's commitment to preserving the integrity of the game and curbing the increasing trend of manipulative foul drawing. Harden himself was low-key pretty proud of this one, saying that he considered himself the poster boy of the rule change. And you've got to admit that this one is a pretty reasonable change. I mean, no one wants to watch a game of players just taking free throws. Next up, we have the Hack-a-Shaq strategy. Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most dominant centers in NBA history, was notorious for his poor free throw shooting. Opposing teams often employed the Hack-a-Shaq strategy, deliberately fouling him away from the ball to send him to the free throw line where he struggled. Well, struggled is putting it lightly. I mean, Shaq's skill at the free throw line, or lack thereof, is the stuff of legends. This strategy disrupted the flow of the game and often extended game times as teams attempted to exploit O'Neal's weakness. The Hack-a-Shaq strategy prompted the NBA to introduce rules to discourage this deliberate fouling tactic. Shaq was so mad that he was constantly being targeted by these deliberate fouls that he actually took it up with NBA Commissioner David Stearns. Apparently, Shaq stormed into Stearns' office and said that if the rules didn't change, then he was going to start retaliating against players who fouled him intentionally. Now, I don't know about you, but I would not like to be the one on the receiving end of an angry Shaq. This means that referees had to be way more harsh on players deliberately looking to foul the offensive player. I mean, it should be obvious why this is a good rule change, right? If a player is so good that you have to break the rules to stop him, well, it's pretty unsportsmanlike, to say the least. In 2016, the league implemented a rule that allowed the offense to choose whether the player fouled away from the ball would shoot the free throws or if the team would retain possession of the ball. This change discouraged teams from exploiting players with poor free throw shooting, leading to a more fluid and exciting game for fans. Next, we have the rip-through move. The rip-through move, popularized by several NBA players, involved offensive players using a quick upward motion while driving toward defenders. The intent was to draw fouls by making it seem like the defender had made contact with the shooter's arms during a shooting motion. This move often resulted in shooting fouls being called, even when the contact was minimal and initiated by the offensive player. As a response to this trend, the NBA implemented rules to limit the effectiveness of the rip-through move. Starting in the 2012-2013 season, the offensive player had to show a legitimate shooting motion before contact was made to be awarded a shooting foul. This rule change aimed to discourage players from exploiting this tactic as a means to gain an unfair advantage. Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, has stated that he would like to see the rip-through rule eliminated altogether. This next one is one of the more controversial ones on this list. Well, less the rule itself and more the need for it to be implemented in the first place. The Zaza rule is named after Zaza Pachulia, who was infamous for performing dangerous closeouts that often led to injury. This kind of technical foul is what referees use against aggressive defensive players who enter the shooting player's landing zone after a jump shot. It's the kind of defensive work that is incredibly dangerous, as it can frequently cause the attacking playing to land in a way that ends up injuring them. In 2017, Zaza injured Spurs player Kawhi Leonard after entering his landing zone, causing Leonard to land awkwardly and seriously damage his ankle. It's the kind of play that is callously disregarding the other player's safety. I mean, it's pretty obvious that you are playing the player and not the ball at that point. Thankfully, the ruling change gives referees the power to punish players who use this unsportsmanlike tactic. However, it doesn't really do much to fix Leonard's ankle, does it? Now, this last one is definitely one of the more embarrassing ones on the list. The rule is unofficially named after Adam Morrison, which we will get into. Adam Morrison is a former NBA player who signed with the Charlotte Bobcats in 2006. On the court, he was nothing to write home about. He played for 3 years with Charlotte before moving to the Lakers in 2009. During that season, he saw very little game time and was released from his contract after just a year. The reason why he goes down in infamy, though, is because of his off-court habits, namely his poor personal hygiene. Yep, apparently Morrison stunk so bad after a game that all of his fellow teammates had to leave the locker room. I mean, that's honestly kind of impressive. You're going into a locker room full of the sweatiest guys on the planet, yet your stink is able to drive them all out? Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So when the NBA changed its rules so that players were forced to have a shower after the game, players started referring to it as the Adam Morrison rule because it definitely seemed like the league was responding to complaints about him. I can't imagine how bad the place must have stunk. It's also pretty rough for a player like Morrison for that to be his legacy. People don't remember you as a player, but for your stench on the bench, it also didn't help that he was known as the NBA's most emotional player, frequently running onto the court after the buzzer to hug and celebrate with his teammates. I'm sure given his particular odor, this did very little to make Morrison more popular with his teams. I wonder if that's why his career didn't last all that long. So there you have it, from some wild abuses of the rules to keeping the game clean in more ways than one, those are the NBA players that changed the rules forever.